Welcome, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending where you are. If you're just tuning in, you are joining Quiet Light's monthly webinar series. It's February. We've got two great senior advisors from Quiet Light joining us today. So we'll just give everyone a second here. So if you want to grab a water or a coffee or lunch, a snack, a drink, whatever, grab whatever you need, and we'll get started in just a second. We have these every month. Topics vary, but they're always fun and informative. So we'll keep you entertained and also educated here at Quiet Light. If you're just tuning in, you are joining our monthly webinar series for the month of February. And we'll give people like 30 more seconds or so to join. And then we'll get started in just a second. Okay, I think we'll get started. We have a ton to cover today, so we'll just, as people jump in, they'll catch up. Welcome everyone to Quiet Light's monthly webinar series. This is the month of February, and we have senior advisors Pat Yates and Ethan Alexander with us, and they will be chatting through the 5 factors that will impact online businesses in 2022. Probably more than 5 factors by the time we're done with our discussion today. So what are you going to walk away with? You are going to walk away with perspective on things like the supply chain and rising costs. Where will those end up this year? How buyers will be prioritizing e-commerce businesses, how you can prepare your business for selling in the current marketplace, and a ton more. If you have any questions throughout the entire hour, there's a Q&A chat box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So you can plop those in there at any point, and we will make sure your question gets answered. You can use the other chat box as well, but the Q&A will be the quickest way to get your question into this webinar. So let's get started. Quick intro on Quiet Light for those of you who may not be familiar with us. Quiet Light is an entrepreneur-led, entrepreneur-focused company that helps entrepreneurs buy, build, and sell online businesses for 6, 7, and 8 figures. So entrepreneur-led, meaning all of our advisors have bought, built, or sold a company of their own. So they are all very uniquely qualified to speak to this topic and help other entrepreneurs achieve the exit of their dreams. We also do a lot of education things, webinars just like this, podcasts, blogs. We speak at conferences all the time. So if you're looking for more content, you can go over to quietlight.com, and there are tons of resources at your fingertips. Okay, let's get to our special guest today. So first off, we have Pat Yates. Pat is a seasoned entrepreneur and advisor at Quiet Light. In 2014, he struck a deal with Robert Herjavec on the Emmy award-winning show Shark Tank. He grew a single slipper kiosk business into a multi-million-dollar e-commerce focused business. During that time, he also did licensing deals with DreamWorks, the NCAA, NFL, and Disney. And then in 2015, he struck up a relationship with the founder of Quiet Light, Mark, and which brings us to us today. That's why he's here. So thank goodness for that intro. And then he currently lives in Louisville, Kentucky, and loves to play golf and spend time with his family. Pat, did I miss anything? Anything else you want everyone to know about you?
No, you made me sound really good. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, you can sign off. You're done for the day. And we also are joined by Ethan Alexander, who is also a seasoned entrepreneur and advisor at Quiet Light. In fact, he is a serial entrepreneur and has successfully built multiple multi-million-dollar companies. So he has sold and acquired a number of companies. He also appeared on Shark Tank, or one of his companies also appeared on Shark Tank. So big Shark Tank crew here today. He has served as a broker for both buyers and sellers, which gives him that unique perspective of how both parties come to the table and approach this process. And he currently lives in San Diego, so he gets a lot of beach time, eats a lot of tacos, and when he's not doing business things, he's hiking and playing sports and traveling. Ethan, anything I may have missed?
No, you got it all, Sam. Appreciate it.
Okay, cool. One more quick reminder, if you have questions at any point, you can put them into that Q&A chat box down below. Okay, let's get into the good stuff. So maybe both of you can take a quick minute and tell us how you got into being an entrepreneur and in this world of buying and selling e-commerce businesses.
Go ahead, Ethan.
Yeah, so my background was actually in the corporate world, found out that that wasn't the world for me. So I ended up looking into what businesses I could start. Stumbled a little on something called Amazon and ended up building a business on their platform, building it up, selling it, and then ended up starting a business, another physical product e-com business off of Amazon, ended up building that one up over a couple of years. It was a 7-figure company and ended up selling that one. And then since I've been acquiring businesses. And so that's kind of been where my focus has been in my entrepreneurial career. And so it's pretty much always been focused on physical product e-com businesses. But the sales channels, the marketing, whether it's inventory manufactured here, inventory manufactured over the US, that's kind of always varied from the different businesses I've been a part of.
That's great. Yeah, obviously my background in ecom led me to work, talking with Mark, especially and understanding how ecom businesses grow and exit. It's very exciting. I mean, obviously Quiet Light, and we're in a weird, wild market, and it's a lot of fun. We're looking forward to talking about all the things that are going on in 22 today.
Amazing. Okay, so speaking of which, should we get everyone's favorite topic off and running here? Supply chains, hot topic these days, as we all know. So did we leave the issues of supply chains in 2021? What can we expect for 2022? What are you guys thinking for that?
Yeah, I'll start with that. I mean, one of the things, a lot of people don't understand that people at Quiet Light also still could currently own businesses. I still own my ecom business that was from Shark Tank. And obviously last year was an incredible challenge. Not only was COVID a big challenge, a lot of people took big bumps. 2021 was even more challenging from a standpoint. It started earlier than people started reporting it to get the slowdowns at port, the slowdowns at shipping. And then you got the rising cost of anything that you can screw, glue, or tattoo to a shipment, not only containers and delays, but transloading costs, and then internal shipping in the United States, having to get full truckloads versus doing it on the rail. There were so many things that rose in 2021. I think that's where some entrepreneurs are very concerned about selling in 2022 because their metrics looked somewhat poor then on some of those shipping costs. And I know, Ethan, you had a little thought on that too.
Yeah, so like you, Pat, like I've seen in my own companies as well, is that we're still having the similar supply chain issues, similar cost increase. I even had some suppliers go out of business, and I haven't heard from them again. So I know it's kind of been a frenzy, especially last year. Thankfully, whether it's in my own companies or with the sellers we're working with, I have seen that kind of frenzy slow down a bit, and things slowly, seemingly like they're going to start coming back to normal. So although let's specifically talk about shipping containers, because I know that's always a big topic of conversation and a huge price point that a lot of people experience over the past year. Although my assumption is that they won't be getting back down to pre-COVID levels within this year. I do see them coming back down to a more reasonable amount. And so good news is I think we're over the hump of craziness, whatever you want to call it, the peak of kind of what was going on, especially caused by everything with COVID and supply chain issues. But I still think it's going to be a lingering issue that we're still going to have to deal with. So meaning that although operations may have been a main factor for a lot of business owners over this past year, especially a lot more focus, attention, energy spent into that, I still think it's going to be a very vital aspect of companies. A lot of energy will still need to be maintained, focused on operations, focused on supply chains. Because if we take it from a selling perspective, I know that when buyers are looking to buy businesses, this often comes up in conversation in regards to supply chain, what current lead times look like, what current cost structures look like. And for the businesses that are able to figure out those lead times and actually have inventory in place, that's always a major bonus in regards to selling your company and setting yourself up for successful on the exit side of things. So good news is that yes, it is. I understand it's a headache. It's a headache for a lot of people right now, but getting and figuring it out it's definitely worth it in the long run, especially when we're starting to have those conversations with buyers who just want confidence that the supply chain, although it's been disrupted, will continue to last.
Yeah, to go further on that topic, a lot of people out there that are Amazon sellers, whether you're direct e-com or Amazon, I do think that some people need to take the idea that this is an opportunity. Some people would say that's kind of crazy, but really any kind of pivot like this always gives, groups opportunities. So I'll talk a little bit about what I'm trying to do with supply chain is I'm looking at trying to manufacture at different times. That's not something that will impact this year, especially my business being seasonal. Most of my product comes in Q2, Q3 into Q4. Well, that turned into Q4 and Q1. So I think a lot of people could look at their supply chain from a standpoint of when they order, maybe do it earlier so you know it's in. Are you going to have to carry that product a little longer and carry the note? Yes, but at least it's going to be in there. So I think any of this stuff, I don't think it's going to get back to normal for about 2 years. But I do think it could get better transactionally. And I think one thing people ought to think about, some pivots you can do is manufacture at a different time. You could also change where you're doing your 3PLs. I know that Ethan was going to talk a little bit about 3PLs. If you're importing to the West Coast, one of the best things you could think about in a 3PL is being able to have it there on the West Coast so you don't have a secondary transportation opportunity. Because where we leaked a lot of money in our company is it would come to the US, it would hit the port, and there were no rails available. You just couldn't get it on, and you needed it faster. So we had to do a transload of a truck, which is 5 figures to be able to get it there. So you're wasting another $10,000. So I think if people look at their entire process from manufacturer, lean on your manufacturer. Try to see if you can work up some new quotes with shipping companies that'll be a little more advantageous, but then look in the United States how you can be a little more creative and be able to at least wait through those 3 or 4 week delays. That's the big thing.
And then to add on that, Pat, I know a common solution I've been seeing in a lot of companies I've been speaking with is we go back prior to COVID. I know the just-in-time type of inventory strategy was kind of the sexy topic and what everyone strived to do. And so now I'm seeing a lot of companies rely off of that and hold inventory somewhere. Whether let's say your manufacturer just has a stockpile of units ready to ship, whether, like you were mentioning, Pat, we're holding inventory here in the US in the 3PL. So it's shifting away from that just-in-time model over to some sort of holding the inventory model. But yeah, most companies along the lines of what you said, Pat, that I'm seeing are deciding to hold excess inventory inside of 3PLs. That way, especially in regards to Amazon businesses with the Amazon restrictions on the inventory that are common in place for most sellers, is that with inventory inside of 3PLs, it's like, great, now we have faster lead times for when we need to replenish stock inside of Amazon as well.
Yeah, I think, and to go one step further, if you're a person out there looking to sell your company in 2022, I would go back and make sure that you do real strong notes of what you spent extra, because this could affect ad backs going forward. If everything dips back down this year to normal rates, that means we could normalize 21 into those rates and maybe get acceptable ad backs. At worst, you need to categorize the expenses that you spent extra and when you were out of stock. I'm talking the day you're out of stock. Make sure you categorize that out so you can actualize that revenue if it comes down to that in a sale.
Yeah, I think you bring up an excellent point there. I wanted to reiterate that, Pat, as I've seen from sellers, even on their financials, they'll have notes. Oh, this month we ran out of stock on, let's just say 2/15/22, we ran out of stock for this SKU. And so even notes like that, seeing that, whether it's on the P&L, whether it's on a separate random document they provide, that helps tremendously in crafting the story in regards to if you're specifically looking to sell, and crafting the story of what's really going on with the brand, of what's really going on with the company, because every company is different. Every company has its ups and its downs. If we're able to craft that story correctly and tell what's actually going on, it really helps us in the buying process and speaking with buyers and helping them understand, it's not because this company randomly crashed, it's because we went out of stock for 2 months on this main SKU, but we were able to get it back up. So it's in regards to that, yeah, it's all about presenting the right story, presenting the right facts about the company.
That's great.
A lot to think about, but it sounds like, unfortunately, it's not a problem of the past. It's going to be a problem that maintains a little bit, but I think you guys had some great feedback on how people can mitigate some of those issues moving forward. So it's not this like detrimental thing that we all think about, like, no, the supply chain carries on, or the issues with it carry on. Well, maybe sort of on a similar topic in terms of rising costs that we're all seeing. Do we think that's going to keep going? How can people mitigate some of those issues and adjust retail pricing strategies accordingly? Do you guys have thoughts on that?
Go ahead, Ethan, I'll let you lead this.
Yeah, so I mean, unfortunately, with costs rising, I don't know what's not going to be rising. I've seen everything from raw materials to manufacturing to shipping to inventory housing, really, kind of everything in the supply chain increasing. I think the rates of increasing will slow. I think like we mentioned in our last question, our last main topic, in regards to like shipping containers, I think those will start to go down over time here in 2022. But in regards to kind of everything else in the funnel process, even customer acquisition, I know, speaking to a lot of companies, like specifically, let's take Facebook in the iOS 14 update that occurred about a year ago. I know that's caused a lot of cost increases in the rise of customer acquisition. And so with that, it's like, yes, I see a lot of prices kind of raising across the board, across almost every line item on the P&L. Even if we get into labor, especially if there's any sort of labor here in the US, I'm sure any business owner here that's listening in and has US employees has kind of also experienced that as well. And so with that being said, I don't think it comes as a surprise to end consumers if to adjust for kind of everything that's increasing for cost to increase. I know personally on my end, I've seen everything I normally buy on my side increase. So, whether it's food, whether it's simple things like gas, I've kind of just come to expect. I think that's probably a similar sentiment among a lot of consumers. Now, of course, it depends on the price elasticity of the industry and kind of your consumer base and what your business industry is in. Of course, some will be more price elastic than others, but I think at the end of the day, at least from what I'm personally seeing in the personal conversations I've been having with sellers, specifically over the last like 6-8 months, is that, yeah, it's almost come to be expected in regards to some sort of price increase. But Pat, yeah, I'd love to hear what you've been seeing personally on your end in regards to all this.
Yeah, I mean, it's really volatile, and as we sit here, it gets more volatile, clearly. Obviously fuel prices touches everything, whether it's manufacturing a fabric in any country. If you're talking transportation, get it here, freight duty and taxes, everything going to the United States. So as soon as fuel prices go up, things are going to continue to go up. I think one of the things that set off some of the inflation was the fact, that we obviously moved minimum wage in a lot of places, and wages went up along with fuel prices, along with everything else, along with tight areas of delivery. And I think that was just the perfect storm of increases. But I don't think they're done. I don't think we're out of the realm of more increases in those. And I think again, going back, sort of my mentality as an entrepreneur is, okay, there's a problem here. What is the most logical fix? And truly, most of this is out of your control, but you can do some things. Maybe you go back to your vendors and you ask for a small discount on something. You pick up $100, $200, $300 a month over some of those things. You can hedge some of these costs. But I don't think it's going to be slowing down. You just need to look at what you're spending. Some people, I don't want to go away from people working in the United States, but there's Upwork, there's Fiverr, places where you can do inexpensive labor on some of the jobs you want to do. I think it's just going to be entrepreneurs having to think a whole lot smarter, because I do not think this is going away. If anything, I think it could increase over the next 4 to 5 months.
And something I've been seeing on the creative end for solutions in regards to this issue with business owners is that money is actually cheap right now. And so therefore, like to take on Pat's example in regards to vendor negotiations, some creative things I've seen are business owners actually negotiating terms rather than pricing, because sometimes vendors right now aren't willing to move much on pricing, but they may be willing to move on terms. Meaning, if you have, let's say, net 30, you may be able to get that up to net 60, net 90, and kind of improve cash flow on your end. So think about that as a potential strategy right now, just because money is cheap. And so therefore, you may be able to utilize that as an advantage in delaying kind of payments that you need for, let's see, inventory or other goods and services to be able to kind of improve cash flow while you're battling these price increases across the board.
Yeah, and to go a little further on that, when I talked about manufacturing off season, what I would call off season with my manufacturer, switching how I do it completely, I went to them and asked, is there an opportunity for savings if we do this? Because you can buy raw materials at a different time. You have people when they're not as busy. The answer came back pretty close to no, but it wasn't a no. So it's always something you can think creatively on how you not only structure your business better, but obviously save some money from it, hopefully. I think this is evolving, and I think everyone will have to talk more about it. So it'll be interesting to see.
I love, though, that there's this mentality from you guys of creative thinking, and it's not a problem. It's like, because as you had said, Pat, it's out of your control. And so I think you guys bring up some great points on there are ways, I shouldn't say around it, but to manage it and to work with it, which I think is important for people to think about. It's easy to sit there and be like, well, gas prices are up, bummer. And another reminder, if anyone has any questions throughout at any point, you can plop them into that Q&A. A few people joined a little bit late. So in case you missed that, any questions at any point are welcome in that Q&A chat box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about the current marketplace in terms of selling and exiting. It's been sort of a seller's market, if you would agree with that. So do you guys, like, is that something that we can anticipate is going to happen and may stay the same this year? Is that status quo? And if so, what are the implications for that? Or do you guys see a transition happening anywhere?
Yeah, I think that if you're talking about the market that we see this year, it's a little odd. And what's interesting is Ethan and I have been in many small group conversations where we're going back and forth about where the market is, and no one can truly agree right now. I think there's a lot of things happening. I even got a call from an aggregator I sold a company to. He's like, "What's going on in the market?" I don't think they really know either. But I think part of it is the pause from all the issues we had. So any entrepreneur that had rising costs, some people spent 6 figures more on shipping. They're sitting and thinking, "How can I exit? Because I'm going to take a hit against my valuation." So I think some people are strategizing. So there's been less going to market, in my opinion, right away. Ethan, what do you think about the people that are buying on the other side? I know sellers are slower to get to market right now than we saw last year, but how are you feeling the market is in buying side?
Yeah, I mean, so overall, I still see it as a majority on the seller's market. You have to categorize it into the one of two areas, whether seller or buyer's market. But it like Pat said, it has changed since Q3, Q4 of last year, in the sense that I think the buyers on their end specifically, they're being more picky. I don't know if that's the right word, but more disciplined is probably the right word in regards to how they're evaluating companies, what they're specifically looking for. So this may be as a result of just greater experience and knowing what works for them, what doesn't work for them. It may be a result of their finance backing, putting more restrictions on what they are able to buy or not buy. So in that regards, it's more of a quality over quantity type mindset in regards to from the buyers. So what I mean by that is that buyers are really looking for high quality businesses. I think those businesses will sell all day, every day. And high quality in this sense are brands that are defensible in some regards. There's something special about them, something that can't easily be copied. Now, this could be from a variety of factors. It could be from the actual products themselves, if they have some IP to them. It could be from their branding, their customer list, the story they've been telling over the years. So there's a variety of ways I've seen brands do this, but really I'm thinking we're moving away from Me Too type products and those companies selling really fast to where brands are really wanting something unique and defensible, and that's going to last for a long time. So rather than looking, okay, what's my return on in 2 years, what's my return on this in the next 5 to 10 years. So I think that timeline and kind of the way those deals are being analyzed is changing a bit up in the market. Pat, I don't know if you had anything kind of more to add to like that specifically.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that. I think we've heard from several different people that I mean, I'm the one that feels like that the market right now is so much different trying to get to LOI because people aren't racing. And like Ethan said, I had a conversation this morning with a guy who's looking to sell in like 6 months. I'm like, make sure your trademark's right, make sure your books are clean, make sure everything is flawless, because right now it is. I believe that some businesses, when everyone was in a race last year, didn't perform as well for some of the aggregators or whoever bought them, and now they're trying to either make sure that what they add on to that definitely grows their SDE and their top line. And I think they'll be a lot more selective. So buyers, while it's a seller's market, you still need to be prepared in a 10 out of 10 to make sure that your business is going to close.
Yeah, and even on the kind of the money coming into the space, we're still seeing a lot more money come into the space. We're still speaking with new buyers every day, every week here at Quiet Light. And so in regards to that, there is still a lot of interest in physical product e-com companies and SaaS companies and content companies and really any online type companies. So good news is I know Pat and I kind of directed it, and we're focusing on like these really high quality businesses. Good news is as an overall trend is that we are still seeing a lot of money, a lot of buyers, which is why, we're saying, hey, it's still a seller's market, although it's been changing since like end of last year. We're still kind of in the same place where, hey, if you have a good company, it's going to be a good one to sell at the end of the day.
I agree. I think it's going to be exciting the rest of the year. I think it's been early. A lot of people got shook by everything that went on last year in supply chain in the fourth quarter. It took a little time to process all that information. So I feel like the next 4 to 5 months are really going to be kind of crazy in the M&A area.
We'll have to have a part 2 of this webinar in like 6 months and see if all of your predictions panned out and where everything.
There's not a good chance of that. We're not very smart, but maybe, who knows?
Yeah, I'll have a no response to my email saying, would you like to join me for a webinar?
Exactly.
Well, while we're chatting a little bit about buyers, sort of on that same topic, what do you guys think or predict, I won't hold you to this, will be the top, say 3 or more priorities for buyers as they look to purchase online businesses this year?
Yeah, Ethan, you go ahead. You have some great notes on this and I'll just capitalize on that.
Yeah, no worries. So I think this is a good segue from what we were just chatting about. And so in regards to the long-lasting brands, I want to put that as a top answer here, because I think that is important. If you have one of those type of companies, then it kind of puts you at the top of everybody's list if they're specifically looking for a company like yours in that industry with those sales channels, with that business model. And so I think that's a huge one. Surprisingly, I've been seeing a lot more conversations tend towards larger businesses. Reason being is a lot of buyers who have large investment backgrounds, if they acquire a larger business, it accomplishes their goal faster. And so I have seen demand for those type of businesses. So if you have an SDE right now, over $1 million, that's kind of what I consider a larger business in this space at the moment. And with that being said, it doesn't mean that anything below that, isn't sellable, isn't good. I'm just seeing greater inquiries for those kind of businesses than I've seen in the past. So good news is, because this online space is growing, and it's the e-com space, it's relatively new. If you look at kind of everything else, if we take at it from like a real estate perspective, it's a very baby industry. And so with that being said, I think it's starting to evolve, starting to mature a little bit more, in the sense that buyers are willing to go larger, willing to go bigger, more buyers are starting to see the value in the e-com space. And because of that, we're having more money pour into this space. And because of that, larger companies are now more attractive. And so I think those two points specifically are super important. And then one thing we've been seeing pretty recently is a big focus on the trends of a company. And so specifically the sales, and specifically the SDE. And reason being is because COVID messed everything up. Companies, most e-com companies have been growing at nice rates. And then 2020 came along, and there were usually 2 responses. Either the companies grew like crazy, or they were industry like travel and they got hit super hard. And so 2020 on most people's P&Ls were abnormal. And then in 2021, things started to shift back to more of a new normal. And so because of that, we've seen some weird trends in P&Ls as of recently. And so specifically like the latter half of 2021, there were a lot of companies that started experiencing year-over-year decline just because 2020 was so strong. And so buyers, because of that, they're really taking a look at what the year-over-year trends are. And so what I mean by that, like, let's take December of 2021. A buyer is going to be directly comparing that to December of 2020 and kind of go back at each and every month for their largest focus is over the past 12 months. Of course, they'll look further than that, but a big focus of theirs is over the last 12 months. So December 2021 versus December 2020, November 2021 versus November 2020, so on and so forth. And so kind of those trends, both specifically on the sales and the SDE side, is where a lot of the buyer conversations that we're having, just because of COVID, it kind of shifted everything up. And it's leading to some interesting trends in the industry. So those companies that are continuing to grow kind of figured it out. It's been great. Those conversations have been perfect. For those that may have experienced a hiccup, maybe on the decline, it leads to a little bit more interesting conversations, because buyers at the end of the day, they want to figure out why. When a buyer sees a decline trend, their ultimate thought is, well, where does the decline end? Like, where does it bottom out? And so that's where often our conversations end up shifting towards, and just really understanding the reasons behind the why of the trends that are going on. So for me specifically, kind of those three topics are a lot of the main points that I hear from buyers when speaking to them about companies specifically.
Yeah, and to expand on that a little bit with buyers, I think that, buyers are going to be very savvy in any kind of situation. I think it's they're getting in. The biggest priorities I see for them is definitely making sure that you're getting a brand. I mean, Ethan hit on that. We've seen some consistencies in areas like dropship have had some issues, resales had some issues. If you're not trademarked, you have a downtrend of sales. It's just a very difficult situation. So anyone running a business needs to make sure that their trends look at least positive. They don't have to be 50% up every month, but they need to be up. And then secondarily, they need to make sure that they're out there. And one other thing, buyers, and this is interesting because I have a good friend of mine I'm looking around, as you see unrest in supply chain and products and stuff like that, a lot of people are going to look at content, which is a great opportunity, not having to buy products, to have a business that is informational online, that you're not buying a physical product from. So supply chain's eliminated from it. And it might be a great way to build something and then build e-com around it. There are a lot of ways that people can approach buying a business coming up in 2022, and they don't all have to be things that are in trouble due to supply chain. So I would encourage people to look at SaaS and e-com as well, especially if they're interested in that, from a buyer perspective, at least.
That's great. I think my favorite quote so far of this hour is "COVID messed everything up." So well said.
Lightly said,
Yeah, sort of sums up.
You just pretty much put that at the top of every presentation.
It's a good excuse.
Before we begin, yeah. So we have a question from someone attending, and the question is, what was the biggest problem you faced as a business owner, and how did you overcome it? So this could be for the past year or just in general as e-commerce business owners yourselves.
You want to go first, Ethan, or you want me to?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, I know for one of my companies, we manufacture here in the US, and we're actually on the textile side of manufacturing. And so when COVID hit, a lot of the sewing industry was forced into PPE and mandated in PPE. So we were actually shut down for manufacturing for quite a while. So for us, it was the supply chain and not being able to keep up with inventory demands. So how we responded is we had to find different suppliers not mandated by those PPE requirements, and so it required us shifting up our entire supply chain because of it.
Yeah, I mean, I've had so many. I actually gave a speech this summer where I talked about several mistakes, and I cited them that I made. But I've always been an entrepreneur. I guess it's more a general question that looks at anything in a forward motion opportunity, and that's always how I've looked at these issues. Is that what happened is already happened. I want a forward motion opportunity to try to fix it. I think that a lot of times what people have to look at is, what does their business truly need? If you want to become this clean business, you have to make really difficult choices. Sometimes, you may need to do your financials different. You may need to outsource that. I think that anytime you come up with a decision, I would also never second guess yourself. That's the main topic I had on that speech. Every time that I've trusted my gut and done something, it's worked out really good. Every time I was a little bit hesitant on it and I just went with it, it's been a travesty. So I'd say just get commitment to what you want to do as far as growing your business, and then implement it in a way that's fiscally responsible in case you're looking to sell right now.
That's great. We have another question from the audience. What are your thoughts on China as a longer term, so next 2+ years, supplier, now that they are endorsing Russian invasion of Europe? I'm not sure we'll be able to answer this question, but if you guys have any thoughts, I know it's a hot topic.
Yeah, I'm not the Secretary of State, so I wouldn't like to. I especially don't want to try to predict what China's going to do. But obviously, this is a very fresh situation, and it's not going to help anything. To what degree, we don't know. I do believe that people understand well enough that the world's economy has to continue to grind. There's no question that has to happen. What kind of issues we're going to see come out in the middle part of the year are still really unknown. There could be some issues. I really can't predict that, Ethan. I don't know if you have any more thoughts on that, and I don't want to get too deep in that.
No, unfortunately, I am not the best at keeping up with political news, so I don't have a lot of comments on China's political stance with Russia at the moment.
Yeah, and I think thank you for that question. Of course, it's obviously something we should be thinking about. Of course, I mean, anytime anything's happening in the world economy, we should be considering it. I think in general, as you guys said, like there's really nothing we can do except sort of wait and see how things go. And again, as Matt said earlier, it's something that's out of your control, right? So like, it's not like we can really hard and fast give advice on those types of political things that are happening, but it's something that obviously we're all going to be aware of, and as the next as the months play out, I'm sure it'll become a hotter topic, and I think everyone's perspective will sort of develop accordingly.
And like one thing we're doing, not specifically to that exact point of what China's up to, but like I know on our end with our company is that we're just looking for different supplier contacts, decisions, and so because of that, we're adding basically to our roster list of who we can use as backup suppliers should we need it. So I think that's an easy solution, easy response that you could do as well if this may cause a huge burden to your personal supply chain, then it may be time just to build that roster, so to say, in regards to who's your backup supplier, what's your backup plan. If you never have to use it, that's best case scenario. If you do have to use it, great. You've already thought through it. You've already established those contacts, those connections, because I think it's something you could easily add. Oh, I'm going to spend 1 to 2 hours a week kind of improving my supply chain roster just in case worst case scenario happens.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point.
So we've talked a lot about sort of all aspects of 2022, supply chains, buyers, etc. So taking maybe a step back, fundamentally, what are the steps for preparing to sell your business in 2022 for those people tuning in that are like, this is the year? What are the things that they need to do to get to that place?
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead, Ethan.
Well, so first of all, because of the way buyers evaluate companies, it's really heavily focused on financials. And so therefore, kind of a really big key component of this is making sure your financials are in order. So this is specifically your P&L. Yes, some buyers ask for balance statements, but really a lot of the focus and a lot of the vetting is from the P&L. So it's best to have the last 3 years of your P&L ready to go on a monthly basis. If you're a physical product company, having your COGS on an accrual basis. So having that documentation specifically financially is super important, because often that is where the conversation starts for a lot of companies, and where a lot of buyers first take a peek and to kind of figure out, hey, is this the company for me or not? So kind of in addition to kind of what Pat said earlier, keeping notes and documentations on when things go out of stock, when prices increase, when just when different things happen. If you could annotate that and just keep a running log or running document, that's going to help you so much better in whenever you get to the point of thinking about an exit, of, like I mentioned earlier in this call, in crafting the appropriate story of what's happened with your brand. Because if you're running this company for 3, 5, 7 plus years, it's often hard to remember exactly, oh yeah, what happened back in 2019. I remember something out of stock,
Right.
but I don't remember exactly what. So it just you help yourself so much better when you keep documentation practices kind of up to date. And it doesn't have to be anything sophisticated, anything fancy. It could be on a piece of paper. It could be on a Google Drive, Google Notes, whatever fits your fancy. That could work.
Yeah, I think that Ethan makes some great points. I think, first of all, your financials need to be in really good shape. I guess the first step is to talk to someone that you trust about positioning your business to sell. Now, we're not saying everyone needs to come to talk to Ethan or I, or Quiet Light for that matter. You need to speak with an advisor or someone that can help you understand what business you have and what are the issues, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses. So it's like when we think about this, Chuck Mullins, who's with Quiet Light, he has a saying to get ugly early. And that's really what we do at Quiet Light. We probably send people away to improve their businesses more than we sell them by an exponential number. Because I can tell you that we see businesses that we say, okay, I could always put you out there, but I'm going to tell you it's not going to be successful. And I've had so many people look at me like, well, aren't you in the business of selling companies? Well, we're not in the business of selling companies if it's a bad situation for the seller. It has to be perfect. We maximize your exit. So I think not only making sure that your financials are in good shape, I believe in 2022, it's going to be really important to have your taxes done quickly so you can look at SBA pre-approval. As interest rates rise, if you have the ability to utilize SBA money, which is going to be cheap, that is going to be a great way to sell and buy a business in 2022. But sellers have to make sure they have that documentation updated so we can send it into our SBA partner banks to be able to get that. So I would get with an advisor and talk about every step of the process. And probably what's going to happen is if you want to sell now, you're going to need to wait 90 days because you're not going to be quite ready, which we invest that time to help you get there, regardless of whether you sell with Quiet Light or not. So I think finding that person that can help you position it well to sell is going to be the first step to understand if you're even ready. Everybody wants to sell if they're going to sell, but the question is, are you ready? And we walk through that very methodically. And there are a lot of ways you can check that even if you wanted to on your own.
What would you say are the main reasons businesses are not ready to be sold? Is it financials or is it other issues? Like what are the things that you guys are finding when you are either working with people or, turning them away to work on things and come back when they're ready?
Probably 90% of it's going to be financial. I'll let Ethan comment on that as well. I mean, I have so many people come in and say, I'm going to get my bank statements together and I'll put them on a spreadsheet and I'll send it over to you. I'm like, no. There have been so many people that you look at their financials and it's like I've seen people that legit have like paper receipts everywhere and they really don't do it. So in that situation, we might put you with a partner firm that will work with your financials and help you build them. I think that's going to be number one. But the biggest thing is what Ethan talked about earlier is making sure that your trend is right, because the timing of this is so incredibly important. So I think that's the biggest thing. Ethan, I don't know your thoughts on that.
No, I was going to say the exact same things, Pat, and because most of the big issues that I see and what a lot of our time and focus is on with the preparation that Pat was referring to is the financials. And if someone has financials, then often secondarily it's mostly due to the COGS. And so especially with a growing company, you want to make sure your COGS for a physical product company is recorded on an accrual basis. Reason being is that if it's on a cash basis with a growing company, your P&L at the end of the day shows your profit, your SDE, as a lot smaller because a lot of your cash is being sucked up by the purchase of inventory. But switching it over to an accrual process, you're recording your COGS when you actually sell, not when you actually buy the inventory. And so therefore, it's kind of an appropriate measure. And with a fast growing company, your actually bottom line increases in regards to that as well. So like that is like a main issue I'll see, and something we want to make sure we get right, because let's say someone's doing $1 million in sales, their P&L can easily show close to nothing, but if we switch up COGS, we may be at a couple $100,000. And so that vastly changes the valuation for a company just by fixing that simple exercise. So that's why we spend a lot of time on these financials, and why Pat and I are emphasizing its importance is because at the end of the day, it does make a big swing in valuation just to make sure it's correct.
That's great. I know financials is always something that comes up in every webinar, every discussion, because it is so important. And I think obviously in 2022, it's going to become even more important. So this is we've kind of talked about a lot of my next question a little bit throughout, but maybe just sort of help recap or reiterate or add on to anything that we haven't talked about. How can people increase their business valuation given current market trends and predictions, everything we've sort of discussed today? And before you guys answer that, another reminder, we have about 15 minutes left in this webinar AMA. So if you have any questions, please feel free to plop them into the Q&A section so we can make sure that we get them answered for you before we have to sign off. So anyway, back to my initial question. How can people increase their business valuation this year?
I mean, I think we've talked a little bit about all of those things. I think examining where money could be leaking. I mean, maybe you have several software packages that are not necessary. I think that once you go through there, to be able to increase your SD, some people have to understand that a business that makes $100,000 is worth less than makes 300, which is less than makes 500, which is less than makes 800, and so on. So increasing your business top line with an eye on your bottom line is for sure the best way to do that. But there are little things like the trademarks we talked about, like making sure that your listings are all done, that your store page on Amazon is really pops. There are little things to make yourself look like $1,000,000 that you have to do as you're leading up to that. And again, that sort of goes back to having an advisor, someone that in your corner to tell you some of those things to be able to do. And many times it's going to be about that advice, because we may say, you have 6 months of time that there's been a little crazy, but let's go 3 or 4 months more. Let's improve that and then project out 2 or 3 months. And then maybe you'll be in a much better situation. I think it's about having the right advice and then having actionable items that you can go ahead and try to do as you improve that SDE.
Yeah, and I think a lot of our conversation has been focused on Amazon just because we're having a lot of those conversations. I know that receives a lot of the press these days on the selling side. I'm assuming a lot of our attendees may be in that space. If not, like, let's say I'm no, and we could talk directly about your business model or your business industry. But I wanted to focus specifically on Amazon brands, just because I have a feeling that's going to be most applicable to everybody here. So kind of in addition to what Pat said, to kind of hit on some more specifics there is, one, trademarks have been super important for Amazon brands. I'm seeing more and more buyers almost require it as part of their filtering criteria, just because they want that protection inside of Amazon. So that's super important for a brand. Selling the entire account. So if you have an Amazon brand or an Amazon account, excuse me, that has multiple brands in it, and you're only trying to sell off one, it's going to be important to split that off into its own account so we can sell the entire account to a seller, or excuse me, to a buyer. And so maybe that's that's a conversation for another day, Sam. But that part is extremely important. It brings a lot more buyers to the table, which in case raises offers, raises valuation. Kind of like we were mentioning before, having something unique about your product. So it's not just an easy, me too. I know the common example in the space has always been the garlic press. So it's not just, the same old garlic press that everyone is selling. There's something unique. There's something differentiated behind it. A lot of the times it does come in the form of having the highest, if not the second or third highest review count in the space, and having at least a review score of usually 4.2 and above. Of course, if you get that 4.5 and above, that's always better. But having a strong review count specifically for your products as well. Pat, I don't know if you had anything kind of more to add on.
I think that sums it up well. I think that anyone that's preparing their business, they just need to make sure everything that you could possibly look at, your standard operating procedures. Some people don't think about things like that. Go ahead and catalog your operating procedures on a daily basis, so you won't have to worry about that when you get into a sale, and you can easily enunciate everything about your business. You got to figure that if you're going to walk through it day 1 to day 30 in a month's time, you need to be able to show all that when you're selling.
And then I think one cool factor, sorry, Sam, one cool factor that not a lot of people talk about is the actual owners themselves. So surprisingly, you as the owner of your business and your willingness to have conversations with buyers to help buyers kind of understand your business, understand your story, that actually plays a huge factor into kind of all this that I feel like is not always discussed. And so what I mean by that is if, let's say I'm the owner of my company and I'm selling it, having engaging conversations, being easy to work with, being respectful to the buyers, trying to help them understand, because you have to understand when a buyer comes in your company, you may be running this for multiple years, so everything about your company. When a new buyer is coming in and checking it out, it's the first time they've ever heard of you. They really know nothing. And so buyers often come in the sense of overwhelm, and they may not be able to keep all the facts straight. And it doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad buyer. It's just businesses are complicated. There's a lot going on. If you can tell that they're legitimately trying to learn, trying to understand, trying to make sure everything makes sense, and you're there to help them, that has always been a tremendous help in getting businesses sold and actually getting it to the finish line. Because buyers, at the end of the day, they want to work with good people. And I've often had a couple exits last year that I was able to help clients with, is that the buyers are like, whatever your next idea is, let me know. I want to be a part of it. I want to invest in you, just because that relationship is so good. So I think, like, looking at from a future perspective, you may sell this company, this one time, but you may just have added to your investment pool or to future contacts that may help you with your next business venture just by treating this process appropriately.
Yeah, and the thing is, buyers or sellers need to understand a lot like you'd see if you were watching a Shark Tank episode. If you have to know your numbers, you have to know your business dead. Because when you get into diligence, people need to understand that you're going to make strong answers and everything. The better prepared seller has a much better chance of closing. It's just that simple. Know your numbers, know your business inside and out.
That's great. And I think it's so important. I just love that relationship piece that you mentioned, Ethan, because I think we all think of it as being this very transactional process. You check these boxes and then it's done. But in fact, that is absolutely not the case. And it's a long process. You're in discussions with these people for a long time. It's better for everyone when you're actually enjoying it and getting along. We have a question from a viewer. Given how unprecedented the past 2 years have been, should we expect significant changes to the negotiation process when selling? So I think this is from the perspective of a seller.
I mean, anytime you're going through a sale process, yes, it's going to have some issues, but I don't think you'll necessarily see anything different this year. I mean, aggregators and buyers typically go down to the end, and the numbers are the numbers, and it typically gets negotiated. I really don't see anything that would change this year in that part. I don't know if you do, Ethan. I mean, other than it's going to be a struggle to get certain ad backs that people would like based on numbers from 21. I think the process will be very similar, maybe quicker if we're out of COVID for attorneys and things of that sort. What are your thoughts, Ethan?
Yeah, as far as like deal structures, I haven't seen like anything new come to the table in the past couple of months other than your typical cash, seller note, earnout type structures. That's been pretty normal. So in that sense, I don't see anything changing. However, it does depend on the risk of the business. And so like we go back to some things that we said earlier in regards to trends. When trends are declining, then we'll start to see buyers respond to that in regards to more quote unquote creative deal structures, in the sense that they're adding either more seller financing portions, more earnout portions, just because there's a higher perceived risk for that business. So I think a good way to think about that is if you view your business in the eyes of a buyer and view it in the sense of, okay, these factors may be an issue, may be a red flag, may be a concern. These factors maybe I can or cannot resolve. So kind of my risk points of my business. If those are substantial, then you could most likely expect buyer response to be to those risk aspects to be some sort of non-cash component to the offer they're presenting. Yeah. Most of the common types, that's going to be seller financing or an earnout of some sort. Both of those can be structured in a variety of ways. But typically, that's when I'll see those specifically be brought to the table. If a business is solid, if it's healthy, if it's growing, then usually that's when we have a lot more competition. Obviously, when we have a lot more competition in the market, we can drive more cash up front type offers. And so we start to trail away from offers that may have a higher influence on that seller financing or earnout type portion.
We could also see a little more, and I mean, there's some aggregators who I recognize in here that probably would talk better to deal structure from their side because we end up seeing it. I do think that it'd be interesting to see if there are more people looking at earnouts as they go along. Let's sellers keep 10, 15, 20% equity in a company if an aggregator is going to grow it. And then they're able to maybe put something in the contract that normalizes some of this supply chain bump. And maybe it's done over 2 or 3 years as it starts to get better. I could see structures like that would make some sense on some of the problems that happened in 21. But again, it's a little deeper dive to be able to do that. And I think that will be open, but it'll probably still be something that the structures that we'll see will be very similar. But I think that's an opportunity.
And kind of a cool fact I wanted to add is that I know a lot of the press and a lot of our conversation in regards to when we identify buyers is naming aggregators. And so actually we just looked at kind of what we did last year here at Quiet Light, and 70% of our sales actually came from non-aggregator type buyers, meaning that we were able, we have a large buyer base, specifically here at Quiet Light that we've been working for the past 15 years to build up and are building it up every day. And so with that being said, it's like we are able to find better fits sellers than necessarily specifically aggregators, because I know they do receive all the press, and we do talk about them a lot here. But with that being said, it doesn't mean every transaction goes that way. So at least in our case, 70% of them actually don't go that way, meaning we're able to find kind of a better suit, a better fit, a better offer for our sellers in that specific direction.
And I think one thing too is for sellers out there, it's going to depend. I mean, a lot of people feel like going directly to an aggregator is going to work. And look, we have relationships with most of these aggregators. They're all great people. Some of them are here today. And, we support them completely. If someone can get their maximum exit going direct, then we understand that they would do that. But I think it's the opposite. I think some of the aggregators would almost rather us vet the company and make sure that they're prepared right before they end up buying it, because their covenants and their raises that they've had are going to depend on how that business can implement. So I think sometimes it's very important to put several eyes on it. It's like you wouldn't sell your house to the first guy that walks up and knocks on your door. So it's one of those things that I think some of the approach will matter as well, because like Ethan said, if you're going straight to someone, then you're going to eliminate 70% of the buyers we had, which were independents last year. And I'm not saying that to get away from the aggregators buying the businesses. It's just, you need to know every option. You've worked hard to build this business. 40% of the money you make in a transaction in a company is at when you sell it at exit. People remember that 40%. You're going to work 10 years running a business for 60%, and you're getting 40% at your exit. So you need to make sure that situation, you have the ability to maximize it with the amount of people that can look at it and let the market show what your business is worth. That's what I think is really important in these, is to price it right and let it go up if the market sees that this is a really valuable asset.
That's great. And I think it's interesting because I know that aggregators and buyers and everything, it's all very hot topics right now, but I think you bring up some amazing points that it's not really about who you're selling to, but the fit, and if your business is ready, and then the rest of it sort of falls into place.
I know Sam's out there. He's not going to buy me a beer at Prosper for saying come to a broker, but other than that.
Well, I'll be a Prosper too, so I'll cash in on that as well. So we have just a couple of minutes. If you guys have any closing comments you'd like to make, if anyone does have any questions after this that they thought of, or you rewatch it later and you have a question, you're more than welcome to email us at inquiries@quietlight.com, and we can direct you to both Ethan and Pat, who can get your questions answered directly. Any final closing comments from either of you?
I appreciate all 6,000 people that came in today. I'll tell you that. It's really amazing. No, but honestly, I think it is really important. The people that were here today that had a chance to listen to it, understand this is a conversation. We're trying to learn from you as we're trying to learn from others. And that knowledge is what really gets together and helps someone sell a company. Do your homework, talk to a broker, talk to people that you're looking to, or if you're going to sell. And if you're a buyer, still reach out to us, because we may find something that's right in that vertical. I think it's going to be an exciting year. I think it's going to be challenging for sellers and buyers. So that really puts a lot more pressure on Ethan and I this year, I think, than it was last year, as there was a fever pitch to get assets as fast as you could get them. So we're here to help in any way. We don't list every business clearly, but we're entrepreneurs like you all, and we're here to help in any way we can, whether it's just advice or selling your company.
Yeah, and to add to what Pat said, I was just going to say, I know we hit on a lot of kind of broad topics here today. If anyone has questions they want to dive into specifically about their business, let us know. Always happy to kind of dive in and just talk about business. That's why we're here. I know, at least that's why I'm here. I love talking about business. I can do it all day long. So don't be shy.
Yeah. In fact, Pat or Ethan, if you want to share the best way to reach you guys directly, we can, so people can contact you if they do have those specific questions.
Yeah, my email is Pat, P as in Paul, A as in Apple, T as in Tom, @quietlight.com. We used to have them as Quiet Light Brokerage, but it's just quietlight.com.
Yeah, mine's just as easy, Ethan@quietlight.com.
I just put them in the chat for everyone.
Thanks.
Great. Well, Pat, Ethan, thank you so much for joining today. This was a great conversation. I personally learned a lot. Again, that I don't know what I don't know, and COVID messed everything up. And there's ways to be creative, among many other takeaways. But thank you all for joining. And if you had asked questions, thank you so much for submitting those. I hope we answered them for you in a way that was helpful. And tune in next month for our next monthly webinar. Details to come. And I hope everyone has a great day. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.